everyone, hello, welcome to this video series of ASP.NET Core. Doing what do you call that? Lists and how to get them implemented in ASP.NET Core. Okay, problem with last video, as you might have seen, is that our list wasn't really working correctly. So let me open this link. Okay, it will take some time. I don't know how long, but we were not able to actually add things to our repository. Of course, if we click populate, okay, things will actually turn up. But if let's say we just add some keys here, add some numbers to each, okay, both of these are strings, these three are doubles. We add component, okay, we did not actually get the right thing. Okay, somehow everything turns into 0. Okay, so behind the scenes I figured out what the problem was, but how did I figure out the problem? Well, I started looking for some I started experimenting around with some things. First of all, with model validation, okay, ASP.NET Core, okay, it's something we went through before. We like to use this if loop if the model state is valid, okay, and if the model state is valid, then you kind of add components right here. Where is the, oh, it's the other one. Yeah, if the model state is valid, that means we have the name, we have the component type, temperature in degrees C, pressure, mass flow rate. And what do I mean by the models? The model state is valid. That means all of these requirements here, okay, all of these requirements of these properties are properly satisfied. Only if the model state is valid, then you add the new component. Okay, right now, as you can see, the model state is invalid because we did not enter anything for name or component type. Okay, so the model state is not valid here. So let me open up a new line. Open up a new line called if. Okay, and if loops are again very simple, just like for each loops. Okay, those things, you will be two brackets around and then two curly brackets. Okay, to indent it, I just press the equal sign after what do you call that? Highlighting the whole chunk of code. Okay, so if model state, okay, dot is valid, so this is a boolean which returns a true or false. So only if the model state is valid, then you sort of go and add those things. So if I enter everything here and I put add component, it will not add anything here because the model state is not valid. On the other hand, if I populate, I will just have all of this. But somehow if I do everything, add some numbers and add component, nothing actually shows up here because the model is not valid. So actually over here we find that the model validation works, but somehow the keys, the strings and values do not pass over to here. Okay, so that's the clue. The model state is valid, but somehow the keys don't really, the value entries don't really pass over. Okay, so what was the problem? Okay, as I actually went through line by line to compare with a code that actually worked, I noticed that in the input, the ASP4 input, I forgot the equal sign. You can see I forgot the equal sign right here. So I'm supposed to have an equal sign here, and then the thing should work properly. Okay, so that was the only error that was there. So I just did model validation just to make sure that the model validation thing worked correctly. So you see the ASP, the validation for this part actually works, but this part didn't work because I forgot the equal sign. So let me save and save it here. Alright, and then when I reload, when I resend, I can do all of this, and then I'll put add component. Okay, now the thing actually works. So I can just keep adding components like this here, and it will keep adding to the list. Okay, I can navigate away and come back, and it will still, all of these things will be there. I can click populate, I can again add things over here, and then add component. Okay, I can say this is a elbow band. Okay, and then component name is component type is a pipe, and then I can just add this component here. Alright, so obviously this is way too hot, right? You don't have temperatures in excess of 100,000 degrees C. That just doesn't happen unless you are doing a fusion reactor or something. Okay, so this part has been fixed. Alright, so once I fixed it, of course, I could actually save it. Okay, WQA. Okay, I save everything. So I'm going to add the program.cs blah blah blah. Program.cs models and everything. And I can commit this to fixed forms in ASP4. Okay, so that was it. Okay, I managed to fix the thing. Okay, so yeah, that wasn't too much of a, I mean, it was a hassle, and I probably missed out a lot because I was doing videos late, almost at midnight, so I was very sleepy. Not a good idea, so don't do that. Okay, so right now, yeah, we are able to add components, we are able to clear all, we are able to populate, and of course we are able to read whatever is inside the table. So well, let's make it a little more proper, okay, and introduce CRUD operations. Okay, for databases, you must have a way. Okay, first thing first, what is CRUD? Okay, CRUD is an acronym called create, read, update, and delete. Okay, create, read, update, and delete. So whenever you face a list like this, you should be able to add components, meaning to say you are creating components. You should be able to delete it if you want. You should be able to update it if you want. And of course, you're able to read it right here. So the read operation is already here, sort of. So that's already inside. Okay, that's already inside. So yeah, so that's what we want to do. We want to add some functionality of the create, read, update, and delete. So this is otherwise known as CRUD operations. And not only that, okay, we also want to, since we have dealt with lists, okay, we have stored data using a singleton service, which includes a list class. So we actually added a class as a singleton, and inside the class we have a property that it's a list class. So we have that as a singleton. However, we want to be moving over pretty soon to use MariaDB and Entity Framework Core. Okay, so they do things a certain way, which is sort of different from the list stuff. So, but yeah, we'll probably talk more about that later. Okay, so there is a kind of a, let's see. Let's go to let's vim our pages, program model and everything. Okay, so we actually had a component list which we added as a singleton. Okay, and the component list basically has these methods, this IComponentCollection. It just has a list of things. There's a populate list and a clear list. Doesn't do very much else. It is not meant to. All it's supposed to do is to, well, mostly it's here to house this list of things. Then we can so-called put this, we do this dependency injection as a singleton, so that this list kind of stays throughout the whole life of the website. Or when the website is alive, so to speak, we will have all of these things. Okay, the populate list and clear list methods, these are just custom methods that we have, but you're not really doing that much around it. And you see, this clear list doesn't even need to exist here, because the clear list method is just there to what do you call that? the clear list is just there to make life easier so that we don't have to access the list. We don't have to access this list property and then activate the clear function. So that one makes it a little more convenient, but that's all. Okay, all this thing here is just to hold the data, not really to manipulate it or anything. Okay, so we do want a more proper function to help us manipulate data in this list. So this IComponent collection, this interface is just here to give us a way of interacting with the list itself. But the way the whole point of having this class is just to store data, nothing else. You're not supposed to use it to update data. So if you want to use it to update data, we might want to make another class, and that class will help us to update the data, create data, read data, and delete the data. All right. So we will have something like that. Okay. So this is the component class. We generally don't want to deal with this part as much. Okay. This is the ASP.NET core part where we have our forms and everything. We might want to beautify that later. Okay. So, but main thing here is that I want not just the component list and the components. I want to make an interface for myself to do CRUD operations, which is create, read, update, and delete. So this thing, we usually call it a repository, okay? A repository class. So we can call it, well, I'm going to copy component list.cs into an interface. I'll just call this component repository. Okay, IComponentRepository.cs, and I want to make the IComponentRepository.cs have an implementation. So I will have a component, or maybe component repo. I will use the one that stores. Okay, my first implementation is of course storing it in the random access memory, or otherwise known as RAM. Okay, why is it called random access memory? Because the component list, when you add it as a singleton service, okay, all the data in that list is stored as an object, and all these objects are stored inside the random access memory, or RAM. So when you actually use an object to store data, okay, we actually store all the objects, data, or memory. We store the attributes of the object, everything of this object. When we instantiate it, when we make an object, we store all this data inside our computer RAM. Okay, so it will be there until the program shuts down. Then you know the RAM is freed up. Okay, so that's what happens, and that's what we are doing here. Okay, so let's visit IComponentRepository and then component repo ram.cs. Okay, so first thing first, yeah, I'm not going to delete all of this. Okay, first thing first, what I want to do is make a new interface. Okay, so on the left side I have IComponentRepository, on the right side I have IComponentRam. So let's do public interface IComponentRepository. Okay, and then I will have open and close brackets right here. Okay, what do I want in this IComponentRepository? Okay, I want my ways to interact with this with the component repository. And why am I making an interface here? Well, because well, let me write it here. I'm making an interface for us to deal with my component repository. Okay, so we can have two different versions. All right, two different versions of component repository. Okay, maybe two or more. I can put two or more different versions of component repository. One type uses RAM to store data. The other type uses the MariaDB database to store data. Okay, for MariaDB, Okay, I assume you know what MariaDB is. If not, please go and watch some of the videos I've made. For MariaDB, you need to know that where is this data stored. Okay, this data for MariaDB is usually stored on the hard disk. It is not stored on the RAM, so that if your website happens to shut down or anything, okay, and then you want to restart it, your MariaDB database will be there. Okay, so that's why I'm having an interface for the component repository. So next time in future, when I want to when I want to have my I can actually just freely swap out between this component list. Okay, this component list. Okay, I can swap out between using RAM to store it and using MariaDB to store it. Okay, so so regardless of whether it's using a RAM to store the data or to store my tables, so to speak, of my components, or I'm using MariaDB, okay, we only care about inputs and outputs, right? So we will need we only care about inputs and outputs. So what are the inputs and outputs, right? We want to be able to create an entry. Okay, so over here we'll only deal with inputs and outputs of the repository. Okay, not how the repository actually stores data. So that's the whole point. Okay, so regardless of whether it's a RAM database or using MariaDB, okay, we will need to have a few things. Okay, CRUD operations. Okay, CRUD is create, update, create, read, update, and delete. Okay, so how do we create data? So the first thing we want to do is create data. Okay, to create data, we'll need to we will not need to return anything, but we will need to input something. Okay, so I'll just call it create component. Okay, or maybe we just create component. Okay, open and close the brackets. Okay, oh wait, no, I'm not going to implement it yet, so no curly braces. So I just have a create component here, and then what are the inputs? I will need to have a proper component input. Component. Okay, component. Okay, the only input we have is the component, and when we create a component, I'm just actually updating the list at the back end. How I do it, okay, doesn't really matter. Okay, at the point, okay, and of course now the compiler is complaining because we already have IComponent collection and component list, so we're not supposed to define them again. Okay, but okay, the whole point here is that, okay, I have a create component to represent the C part, which is create an entry. We need to be able to create entries. So to create entries, we just need to feed in the component object, and then it goes in. That's all. Okay, how do we read? Okay, we want to read. We actually return something. Okay, to read the list, so to speak. To read the list, so to speak, we can actually return the whole list. Okay, so normally what we do is that we can say list get component list. Okay, or get all components. Yeah, get all components. Okay, and then I can say this is a list of component. Okay, this is a list of components, and then I'll say it doesn't need to do anything. Okay, now this is fine if we are using lists for both the RAM repository and the MariaDB repository. Unfortunately, while we use the list class for the RAM repository, the MariaDB repository uses a different kind of so-called list. Okay, this is called dbset. Now, dbset is not a list, so there will be a problem later on where dbset is okay, let me see if there's a to list. Yeah, later on when you want to return when you want to ask dbset to iterate things for you, okay, you will have a problem. Okay, that problem is that the type of object you are returning. For this case, if you want to get all the components, this list of components and this db set of components will not be the same. Okay, both list and dbset are similar in the sense that they can be enumerated through. You can run for loops on both of them, but they are not the same data type. Okay, how then do you specify a return type? Okay, a return type that fits both the list, both the list and the dbset. Okay, both of these share the same commonality, but if let's say I want to use my random access memory, my RAM repository, and I want to return a set of objects, a set of components, a list of components, yeah, then this will be fine, because this is the type we are returning is really a list. But if we were to later on, you will find out that the MariaDB doesn't use lists. Okay, they don't deal with lists, but they use this special class called dbset to store data. Okay, so yeah, we will need to fix that a bit later on. Okay, we will need to actually fix that later on, so that this IComponentRepository is compatible both with the list and the MariaDB. So over here we will need to change. Okay, so I'll just keep a mark here that says to be changed later to fit MariaDB repository. If you don't get it now, don't worry, I'll not change anything. I'm just giving you a primer, and I'll explain again later on. So probably when we use MariaDB, hopefully this thing will be a bit clearer where I'm coming from. As of now, if I keep explaining to you, you'll just get more and more confused. Okay, but this is the part where we read it. Okay, because the whole idea of this this function or this method here or this interface here is just to get a list or get an enumerable. Okay, a list, so-called list of all the components that we have. Okay, the third one, the third part, okay, says what? We need to update. Okay, we need to update. So we can say here, we can make a method here called update component, and this will take two arguments. First is the ID of the component. All right, because we need to specify, okay, which component do we want to update. So to know which component to update, we specify the ID, or we can specify the name of this component. Okay, and after that, we of course need a component object. Okay, so this is the part where we have the update, and then the last one is called delete. Okay, called delete. Void delete component. Okay, and then to delete the component, we just the only thing we need really is the component object. Okay. Okay. Of course, if we don't want to use the component object, right? If you don't want to use component objects to delete, because you will need to you will need to know which component you're deleting, so you need to retrieve that component object. It's not very convenient for the user to delete something by the component object. So what do? You can actually this is what we call overload, meaning to say instead of using components to specify which what do you call that, which component to delete. Instead of using that, we can actually use the component ID to specify which component to delete. Okay. Also, the thing about delete, so these are delete operations. Okay. No, we don't just want a delete operation, we want a mass delete operation. Okay. Delete all components, or clear all components, clear all. So that's the thing if we want to clear the list. That's why I have a clear list right here. And also in create, in the create part, I also want something called populate components. So this one will be like the thing before, where we have a few random components that we just make, and then we will just randomly add them to the list, or add them to this add them to the existing list. Okay, so this is our interface. Okay, so we have all the things that we want this repository thing to do. Now all we need to do is to, well, do the behind the scenes work. How is this repository supposed to do its job? Okay, but I'll just leave that to the next video. Thanks for watching. I'm just doing it very slowly. Okay, in the next video, we'll try to implement this IComponentRepository using a RAM version. Okay, and then we'll use service. We'll add this to the service, and then we'll see how we can move on from there to use MariaDB. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye bye.